The Specialty Coffee Institute, SCI. That was the original name of CQI. More than 20,000 Q graders in more than 50 countries. If SCAA does not want to use it, it won't kill the program. Someday you'll be so famous that they'll have a statue of you in a park, and the pigeons would come and sit on the hat and poop on your shoulders. I tell all my friends my lifelong ambition is to be a flavor. And I keep getting sidetracked by coffee.
Thank you so much, Papa-san, for accepting my invitation.
It's my pleasure.
And to give me this opportunity to really have this in-depth conversation that I have always wanted. And I think this would be really valuable to the audience.
All right. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Okay, so first of all, let's talk about your youth stage. You kind of have a very unique educational background. And I'm wondering, like, how did your studies on chemistry and the military life or the discipline of military shaped your analytical approach to coffee?
It's really the education that's been the foundation. And what made the education at West Point unusual is at the time it was very science focused. Everyone ended up with an engineering degree. First 3 years we had all the science courses. And it wasn't just chemistry, it was like organic chemistry and then inorganic chemistry. And then it was a year of physics. And then a year of studying things like entropy, which is how heat affects various components. And there's also mechanics of solids and mechanics of fluids and courses the average person never even dreamed of taking. What that created for me was a very solid scientific background. So I can read the coffee science literature and understand what they're saying. So that's really what's given me the ability to take that science and then translate it into easier understood terms that affect coffee.
How did you end up going to your family business? Well, like, was that something you were expected for, or was it actually something you actively chose? It's out of your passion.
Well, no, that's sort of fun story. After 4 years on active duty in the Army, I discovered I was not cut out for the Army. And reason is simply the Army is a big corporation, and to be successful in corporations, you really have to go along with whatever the prevailing thinking is. And that was just not my personality. My Army career was not successful. But I'd say if I'd gone to work for General Motors or General Foods, I would have had the same problem. That simply because someone says something is so doesn't necessarily mean it's true. My personality is to challenge things that I don't agree with.
I see.
Okay, that is great in a small business, private sector, not good in a corporation.
Yeah, because you can always make something new, be innovative, right?
Or rocking the boat.
Yeah, rocking the boat.
Challenging authority.
Right.
So I knew after 3 years in the Army I wasn't going to stay. And as a kid I'd worked at the family coffee business, doing sort of odd jobs and repairing equipment and all the things that go on in a small business. And so I said to myself, I should try it. If I didn't like it, I was young enough, I could always do something else.
Right.
But I didn't want to look back and always wonder, well, what if I'd gone into the coffee business? That was my decision to go into coffee. And once I was there, then I knew I was hooked forever.
Lingle Brothers Coffee was established by your grandfather.
No, it's a business started by my grandfather and his two brothers. Eventually, both of the other brothers got out, so it ended up just my grandfather and father. And when my grandfather passed away, it was just my dad.
Anyone else from your family is still in this business?
My brother runs the company now, my brother Jim.
Great. So you have served as the vice president for marketing at Lingle Brothers for 20 years.
The primary business of Lingle Brothers had been roasting and selling coffee for restaurants. As part of that, my dad, the company had developed a line of specialty coffee. So this is back in 1970. So there were a handful of small retail stores that were selling coffee beans. Lingle Brothers became one of the leading suppliers in California primarily. for whole bean coffee. So I had an opportunity to look at that side of the business, specialty coffee. My two favorite memories of that, one is going up to San Francisco and meeting Irvin Knudsen for the first time.
Wow.
He's really one of the inspirations behind the whole industry because as an importer, she was searching for, finding, and then selling high quality lots in small volumes to the sort of fledgling trade. And it was a real treat to meet her and was entertained royally. Another memory, and this is what really caught my attention, one of the customers that we were selling at the time was Swiss Colony Foods, which was basically a meat and cheese company out of Wisconsin. But they had a small line of coffees that they were selling. They sold it out of barrels. There were just 5 different types, and in each in barrels. And the product they were getting at the time was not very good. It looked to me like it had been mislabeled. So they agreed to take on Lingle Brothers supplier. And the only change that we made was putting the right coffees in the right barrel of the right quality. And within 2 weeks, they doubled the volume. And so what it taught me very clearly is although consumers can't verbalize the difference, in their palate they can recognize it. Getting a product that's pleasing dramatically increase their purchase frequency. So the message there is the way to build volume is through quality, it's not through price. That's really had a profound impact on me for the rest of my career.
That's how inspired you to found what later was called the SCAA?
Well, actually, the founding of SCAA was driven by my work with the International Coffee Organization, the ICO in London. At the time, I was a director on the Office Coffee Service Association that was supplying in-office coffee. And we wanted to do a promotion and get the ICO to pay for it. So I've actually wrote a plan for a small promotion for the office coffee industry and then sent it to London, and they actually approved it, which surprised me. This is like a $50,000 grant. Over a 2-year period, it went from $50,000 to close to $1 million in promoting the coffee service group. At that level of money, the ICO wanted to know more about what we were doing. So the promotion fund officer came for a visit, and in talking with him over dinner one night, he asked me if there was an association for specialty coffee that they could help. I said, no, there's no organized specialty industry group. And he said, well, that's too bad because the ICO can't give money to an individual company or an individual. So I said, well, let me talk to some of my friends and see if there's an interest.
Well, then you started the conversation.
And that led to a series of conversations and then a series of meetings over a 3-year period that led to the founding of SCAA.
Wow, why it took 3 years?
People were skeptical. They couldn't really see what an association would do for them. There was also the internal problems about who would be in charge.
I see.
All the normal self-doubt that people go through in starting a new project.
When you co-founded the SCAA back in 1982, what was the single most important problem you were trying to solve for the industry?
Well, there were 2. The big one was just consumer awareness. Sort of buying steps, awareness, trials, and usage. So the first one was awareness. At the time, the industry also had an internal problem that related to integrity. Many of the roasters were mislabeling the coffee. And so one of the driving forces behind people getting involved in SCAA was to try to cut back or eliminate the mislabeling.
When you say mislabeling, that means...
Well, take Indonesia as an example. For a consumer, coffee is coffee. So why not substitute a Mexican coffee, even though it's of good quality, call it an Indonesian and sell it at a much higher price.
Oh, so the mislabel is on purpose in order to fetch a higher price.
Classic one in coffee, particularly in the United States, was Kona. There was more Kona sold than Kona grown for a long time in the United States.
And I think this is still true in the industry today.
Surprisingly, the solution ended up being resolved through flavored coffees. It sounds kind of silly, but the reality is, if you sell someone as chocolate coffee, you can't turn around and take the chocolate coffee and resell it as cinnamon. They know the difference.
Right.
And so once people saw that actually working about product differentiation, then the tendency to want to mislabel normal coffee or unflavored coffee died away.
Were there any gap that you see that prompted the creation of the CQI later on?
Yeah, CQI, the concept came along maybe 10 or 15 years after the development of the industry. And the gap it was designed to fill was science. It was not the marketing that it's come to be. And essentially the people whose original idea this was wanted a place where we could investigate strictly scientific questions about coffee. And that was why it was called the Specialty Coffee Institute, SCI. That was the original name of CQI.
Oh, the Specialty Coffee Institute.
And it was designed to do technical research. It's much the same mission today that the World Coffee Research Organization has. And the kinds of projects they're doing now are the kinds of projects that SCI was established originally doing.
And why
didn't it go forward?
Yeah.
Because we didn't have at the time the funding available.
I see. It's always
at the time SCI was started, it was now CQI, the industry was still composed of small companies. Small companies can't afford to make donations to do research. The big companies that had the capability had done a lot of research. It was all proprietary and they didn't want to share it. So there just wasn't any real opportunity for funding. So CQI drifted for a while until it basically changed its mission from research to improving the lives of producers.
Ah, I see. Looking back at the founding visions of both the SCAA and the CQI, so what do you think have evolved? And what aspects of their current directions that you think are in particular surprising or satisfying?
SCAA, now SCA, has really moved along the path it was designed to follow, and that's the awareness piece. As an organization, it's done an incredible job of bringing awareness to consumers about specialty coffee and particularly the higher quality levels involved in specialty coffee.
And how about CQI?
Well, what's gotten lost in this transition is a very important value that was part of SCA's formation that I'm not sure exists today. And that's the importance of the producer. Back when SCA established a firm foothold and we could see the market growing, the question then became, where are we going to get the coffees? Because it was easy to see then that we'd eventually run out. The answer to that question is initially those coffees were taken from the commercial industry because the commercial qualities way back when used to be a lot better. And that was reflected in the standards for the C contract, which originally called for coffees to be clean, sweet, and uniform, which is the heart of the definition of specialty. And those coffees became unavailable, and so the stocks at the coffee exchange were diminishing, and they had to lower their standards in order to keep fresh coffees in their inventory. As the specialty coffee market grew, more and more producers became aware of it, particularly the export trade. And so the separations got better at origin in order to supply our market. If you look at the price levels today, they pretty much indicate that we've run out of those coffees, and that's why the price is much higher.
Yeah, it's much higher.
So the concern now is, what are we doing to help the producers in order to get them interested in producing more high quality coffee?
And that's where the CQI comes in.
Well, that's where CQI fit. A good example is what happened in Yunnan. Appreciation and awareness of the profitability for quality that didn't exist even 10 years ago.
Right. Okay, so leading a global organization for a decade would be an immense commitment, and you led two. You were the executive director for the SCAA for 15 years, and later you moved on with the CQI, leading it for another 7 years. Yeah. So it's a tremendous commitment. So what was the greatest personal cost of that commitment, and what was the greatest personal reward that made it all worthwhile for you?
Well, the cost is quite high, actually, and it comes from simply not being able to spend the time I wanted to or should have spent with my family. And I kind of look back on that with some sadness, because I wish I'd spent more time with my kids when they were growing up. The satisfaction comes in knowing that you change the way the industry thought of itself. And we're no longer people that think in terms of commodities. We're people who think of coffee in terms of a family of differentiated products. And that's really a quantum shift, a monumental change in the way we think about ourselves.
About 5 months ago, I received an email from CQI announcing that their prestigious Q program will be taken over by the SCAA. And that's what's quite a stir in the Chinese coffee industry, and also I think in the global coffee community. So being the person who literally created the whole program, what's your perspective of the Q program being managed under the SCAA umbrella?
Two things. One is the Q system has become an incredible way for the industry to trade the product. And just the size of it now, with more than 20,000 Q graders in more than 50 countries, it truly has become the language of coffee trading. And the program itself, over the years now, and it's been going 20 years, it's only gotten better. So one of my favorite expression goes, the art of excellence is the process of continuous improvement. And so the CQI program as it existed in its final form is an excellent system. Because of that excellence, it's going to continue. If SCAA does not want to use it, it won't kill the program. The program will continue on under its own weight because of its quality. It may have a different name, but the heart of the program isn't going to change. It's very difficult to take something that's this good and change it.
Right, so however we may call it, be it like the CVA or the evolved Q, the essence of the program would stay.
Right.
Under different names.
Well, they'll use their own name. Proliferation of different brands that are all doing coffee training. My hope is it goes on as a collective effort run by a nonprofit. I think if it's just individuals on their own, eventually the program will lose credibility.
Right, and it wouldn't be this impactful.
Yeah, it won't be nearly as impactful.
Now let's move on to talk about the common language, which I believe is one of your greatest contributions to the global coffee community. So you were trying to create a common language around coffee quality, creating the tools that help people to evaluate and to communicate with each other. So turning from a concept, be it the coffee taster's flavor wheel, the coffee cupper's handbook, or the SCAA cupping form into a realistic tool, it's not easy. Were there significant resistance to this new thing?
Well, you have to step back and separate out the system from just the words. Let's talk about words for a minute.
Okay.
Words are very powerful because they're like little packages of ideas. If I said to you the word banana, what comes into your mind is a picture of a banana, but also the taste, the smell, the texture of that banana. So words then become sort of key in communicating. And that's why I think the new system has a very necessary place, because it focuses teaching people how to associate the right word with the right flavors. The grading system is a little bit different. And let me give you this analogy. If I came up to you and said, I found a great coffee, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it an 8. That tells you about my personal preference.
Right.
Okay, that's captured on the SCAA cupping form in the last box about preference. Okay, if I came up to you and said, I've got a great coffee and it's got a Q score 80, that's an entirely different message. Number one, the minute I say Q score, what comes to mind is the system that created it. So if you're a Q grader or you've been through the Q program, you'll know that that 80 came from rating 10 different attributes.
Right.
And at the heart of those attributes, this coffee is clean, sweet, and uniform. Okay, so that is a much different message to you as a coffee person than the first one is you as an individual. So the trade needs that Q score as a simple tool for communicating, because there's so much wrapped up in that package of ideas about its aroma, its flavor, its acidity, its aftertaste, uniformity, cleanness. So you can't replace that with just a word, or you can't replace that by saying, I liked it.
And what was the industry's initial reaction to that, like standardized and also quantitative tool?
How to put it, the industry response is reflected in the marketplace, in that we have 20,000 Q graders internationally. If the industry didn't want the program, we'd still be at 10. So they recognize it as a valuable communications tool. It's not a substitute for the way you talk to a consumer, because the consumer has no concept if I said Q coffee. There's no meaning. And so for a consumer, words like strawberry or blueberry or chocolate, those are the terms you need talking to the consumer. But you're never going to sell a bag of coffee to the industry by saying it's strawberry or it's blueberry. A trade is going to say, well, fine, send me a sample. I'll judge for myself.
I think creating a system is something. Letting everybody use it or adopt it is a different story. Like, what was the biggest hurdles that you have encountered to persuade people to adopt?
Well, we didn't set out to make it the universal language. It just grew into that. We set out to establish a standard for training cuppers. Actually, the most important part of that standard is the testing, the qualification. The Q is a way of you proving to the industry you have the ability to taste. That's why a lot of people who took the program never got a certificate. Just don't have the athletic skills. And the simple question in the trade, sometimes it's asked, sometimes it's inferred, is, are you a Q grader? Do you really have the qualifications to cup? And so the program answered that question like no other in the industry, no other in the world.
So let's talk about the cupping form for a while. At the very beginning, how did you decide which attributes to evaluate for a cup of coffee?
It was trial and error, and what accelerated that, believe it or not, is the cup of excellence. Because the form was being developed at the same time we were learning how to do competition auctions. And so the Technical Standards Committee of SCAA and the people involved in the Cup of Excellence, primarily George Howell and Susie Spindler, were working on their form. The two sort of met in the middle, and for a period of about 5 to 7, maybe 8 years, it was the same form.
Yeah, because the very beginning of the Cup of Excellence program, the COE doesn't actually have their own cupping form. So what they used back then was the SCAA cupping form. So now looking back, if you had the choice to redesign the form, what would you change? Or you'd rather stay the same?
The only thing I would personally change on the form today is taking sweet from an individual cup to on a scale of 1 to 10.
Just like how the COE does.
I really have to emphasize that the cupping form itself was a group project with some very talented people. Over time they created, I think, as good a form as you can for trying to describe something very complex.
And I think it's a very efficient tool to just record your sensorial experience and being able to communicate by looking at your cupping sheet. Yep. Beyond the technical aspects, what did you hope that the common language would do for the human connections across the coffee value chain, from the producers to the baristas and then to consumers?
Well, essentially, the language, the words, are part of a marketing program aimed at consumers. When I first published the Cupper's Handbook, I went around the country to give a speech and a book signing and promoting it. And in my speech, one of my favorite examples is about the power of words. And what I tell the class is that for each good word you learn to accurately describe the flavor, you will sell 1 more kilo of coffee from your business each week. So 1 word, 1 kilo. 10 words, 10 kilos. 100 words, 100 kilos. So for a retailer, the most important thing you can ever do is develop a good vocabulary.
Right. But how can people develop good cupping skills and being able to capture and describe that flavor?
The descriptive part is training. You have to learn to associate the stimulation that you smell or you taste to the relevant term. That relevant term has to have some basis in science, so you use it consistently. It has to be a common enough term average consumer will recognize it. Between science and familiarity is where the line of descriptive cupping is drawn.
Papa-san, had you ever been to Yunnan before you were invited by the Yunnan Coffee Exchange to serve as their senior advisor?
No, this is my first experience in a visit, but let me step back a minute and tell you one of my favorite coffee stories.
Okay.
For reasons unknown, back in the late 1970s, a container of Yunnan coffee ended up in the port of Los Angeles. And the port didn't know what to do with it, so they had a local broker find a home for it. And that broker turned out to be a friend of my dad's, so that container ended up in our warehouse. So that was the first time I'd ever seen coffee from China. I didn't really even know they brewed coffee here.
Yeah.
But what got my attention was it was so good. And when we had it and used it in our blends, everybody commented, my customers commented how much they like the coffee now versus what was before. And so I reported that back to my dad and asked him, can we get more of it? And he said, no, I don't have any source. So I knew that China produced some fine coffees based on my experience as a roaster.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. No, Yunnan's been producing good qualities for a long time.
Thank you.
It's just the world never knew about it.
Yeah.
Distribution channels were not established. So it was an easy decision for me. Yes, let me see what's going on in Yunnan and see if I can help.
Okay. So during your 5 years in Yunnan before the pandemic, what was the biggest challenge that you encountered in Yunnan compared to your work experience in other coffee origins?
Actually, it was not too much different.
No culture shock? No language barrier?
I've been working in coffee all over the world for virtually my whole career. Had enough experience with different cultures in the Army, starting with my years in Vietnam. But the problem is, in the beginning always, is to develop a coffee culture. That means a coffee culture that has an appreciation, an intuitive appreciation for quality.
Do you still remember when we were paying visits to coffee farms, we always being asked, would you like a cup of tea? Instead of asking whether we want to have a cup of coffee. Do you remember that?
Yeah, but I've always been a big fan of tea. I think the positioning is coffee's a morning beverage, the beverage of the workplace. Okay, when you're finished and you're trying to relax, and in the afternoon it's tea, because tea's a beverage of reflection.
Calming down, right. But this situation has been changed. Like, if you go to Yunnan one more time, you will be asked, like, Mr. Lingle, would you like a cup of coffee?
My question would be, is it any good?
Yeah, it is good. As a senior advisor of YCE, your primary goal was to assist Yunnan to be more competitive on the international market, right? And I know that back in 2015, you have already mapped out a roadmap for Yunnan Coffee for its development. And then the pandemic came and everything was changed. By the end of 2019, there were still some projects going on, projects that are not yet to start. So if the pandemic hadn't interrupted, what was the very next item on your agenda?
The next step would have been to try to fix the YCE business model. The fundamental problem was solving the difficulties in the timing of payments. Farmers need immediate cash. Roasters don't want to pay for it until they know it's good.
Yeah.
And we were not able to solve that problem at YCE.
So are there any aspects of your work in Yunnan that you still think about very often that you would hope someone else would pick up and carry forward? Like kind of the unfinished business.
Well, yeah, the unfinished business right now are market linkages.
Market linkages.
We need to strengthen the market linkages between the Yunnan coffee growers and the international pool of buyers.
Okay, and how do you think that can be done?
Well, these competitions are a good avenue. I mean, that's been the value of the Cup of Excellence program. it really has accelerated the establishment of market linkages.
Now that you have mentioned the COE competition, let's ask a question related to that. So this year marks the 10th anniversary of the Best of Yunnan Green Coffee competition that you helped to start. And also this year marks the very first Yunnan COE pilot program. So from your perspective, do you think the two competitions risk overshadowing each other, or they serve different purposes?
No, actually they serve the same purpose, and that's awareness. And from my perspective, you can't have too many competitions, because what you're trying to do with a competition is attract the interest of the buyers.
Right.
And coffee's got a fair recognition now among the international buyers, but not nearly big enough. So the more competitions you do, regardless of what you call them, the better. The marketplace is going to set the value on a macro scale. On a micro scale, internal marketing that the various competitions do, but it's such a small scale. It's, in the overall scheme of things, it's kind of meaningless. We're trying to do for the benefit of all the farmers in Yunnan, not just the ones that enter the competition, is increase the value of their product. Yunnan's at the phase now, beyond awareness, it's trials.
Going back again, do you think those two competitions will compete with each other?
No. Overall, from the viewpoint of the consumers and the trade, it's just a competition. They don't make that distinction about who organized it and what the rules are. What's important is that it was a competition, it was independently judged. There were winners and losers. I want to see a winner.
After all these years leading organizations, traveling throughout the world and setting standards, now sitting down and having a well-prepared cup of coffee, what gives you the biggest satisfaction?
The biggest satisfaction I have at this point in my life is simply knowing that I made a difference.
Such a big difference. And so after being in the coffee industry...
Let me tell you a funny story about that.
Okay.
My wife, Gail, used to kid me that someday you'll be so famous that they'll have a statue of you in a park, and the pigeons can come and sit on the hat and poop on your shoulder. Fame and fortune, you never will take to your grave. The only thing you can take to your grave are good deeds. And I feel I've done some good deeds while I've been around.
For sure. You changed the landscape of the industry. So after being in the industry for almost 6 decades, has your definition of quality evolved?
No, it hasn't changed. It's really simple. Great taste, no defects. 4 words define specialty coffee.
Was there a single pivotal moment, like a failure, a conversation, a cup of coffee that has fundamentally changed your trajectory?
Yeah, it was that question that Barry Davies asked me about, is there a specialty association? And knowing that if we could start one, then it greatly increased the leverage of being able to make the changes that I wanted to make in the industry.
Thank you for taking actions after that conversation. If you could go back and give one piece of advice to younger yourself, starting out at the Lingle Brothers Coffee, what would that be?
No, it's quite simple. Learn to cup. Cupping is a quintessential skill in coffee. If you're going to be in the coffee industry for any length of time, you need to know whether or not you can taste. You have to do that.
Yes, I can't agree more on that piece of advice. If you were to give a piece of advice to a young person who would like to make a meaningful impact on an industry just as you have, what would that be?
Don't ever listen to someone who tells you no. Even if you go it alone and you feel it's the right thing to do, follow your instincts.
I love that. Thank you, Papa-san. If you had to distill your life's work into just one single sentence, what was the central problem you were trying to solve?
The underlying purpose, the driving force for me, was getting a better deal for the producers. They've been on the short end of the value stick for centuries. And if the industry is going to thrive, that has to change.
Yeah, if the industry needs to be sustainable, it has to be changed. Do you think that's the thing that the next generation should focus on?
Yes, absolutely. My brother Jim and I had this conversation about Lingle Brothers moving forward. And his basic question was, why would you want to continue in this industry if you knew it was impoverishing the farmers?
And what was your answer?
The answer was simply that needs to change.
Do you have a plan for that?
Well, that's why we're here. That's what the Q program is all about.
The education for producers in cupping is very important because they need to know how well their product is so that they can negotiate with the buyers.
And they need to know how to improve their product.
Right.
And that's what CQI is all about.
Let's end with a hypothetical. So, if coffee didn't exist in the world, what do you think you would have done to make a living?
I would have been a flake.
A flake?
Someone who carouses and drinks beer and sort of wastes his life away.
Really? Wow.
I tell all my friends my lifelong ambition is to be a flake. And I keep getting sidetracked by coffee.
And I'm glad that we have coffee in this world. Let's hope that new generations will also have coffee to consume. Okay, I think that's all for
Okay.
today. Thank you so much, Papa-san.
My pleasure.
Thank
It's been
you.
fun.